an original.
From Story Studio Network.
Welcome to The Fatigue Fixer, the podcast where we get real about why you're so tired and what you can do about it. Every 2 weeks, we'll gather here for honest, heart-to-heart conversations about reclaiming your energy, your patience, and feeling truly at home in your body. I'm Dr. Sarah Vedmonkar, a naturopathic doctor, Menopause Society certified practitioner, Enneagram 3 entrepreneur with enough business ideas to last me 10 lifetimes, and a hockey and baseball mom. Over the past 15 years, I've helped thousands of women just like you cut through the confusion and finally feel like themselves again. And now, I want to hear from you too. Use the link in the show notes below to leave me a voicemail, to share your story, give feedback on an episode, ask a question, or tell me what's been exhausting you. And your voice might even make it onto the show. Together, we'll get to the root of what's really draining your energy and give you the tools, clarity, and encouragement you need to fix your fatigue. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to The Fatigue Fixer. I am your host, Dr. Sarah, and today we're talking about something that most of our guests have recommended when I have asked them, if you could pick one thing that you would encourage our listeners to do to help fix their fatigue, what would that be? And the answer that comes back the most often is exercise. Whether that was a conversation about thyroid, autoimmune fatigue, PMS, we need to be exercising. Now, we all know this, so I am not going to bore you with all the benefits of exercise and why you should be doing it. You already know. You probably already want to be exercising. You probably say that you want to do it. But so many of us fall into the trap because we're tired. And so we don't exercise, and it keeps us tired, so we don't exercise, and it keeps us tired, and we fall into this vicious cycle of not exercising and keeping ourselves tired. And what this means for a lot of us is we're not moving our bodies a whole lot. When we look at the stats, it's not very good. 46% of women in Canada are meeting the National Physical Activity Guidelines, which means 54% of us are not. And those guidelines are to do 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. That's 2.5 hours. And sadly, this starts when we're really young. When we look at kids, boys are twice as likely as girls to meet the physical activity guidelines. So only 26% of girls are meeting their physical activity needs, which, if you're wondering, for kids, is an hour per day of moderate to vigorous physical activity. Some of us are more newly sedentary. Some of us have been sedentary for a long time. And I'm hoping today we're going to explore some of the reasons why that is, and some of the reasons why we're making exercise way more difficult and way more complicated than it needs to be. And my intention with this episode is that you walk away feeling inspired and motivated, although we'll talk about why relying on motivation is a bad idea, but that you actually start taking action on this thing that you know you should be doing and that you want to be doing, and that a lot of us are not doing. Because what this means for a lot of us, again, is that we're very sedentary. So adults in Canada are sedentary for 9.6 hours a day, excluding sleep time. So a lot of us are just not moving a whole lot. And one of the things I've seen post-pandemic from a lot of us who work from home, and I put myself in this bucket, working from home makes it very, very easy to be very, very sedentary. If you're not intentionally leaving your home, going for walks and exercising, you're probably moving very little. And we know this because, again, 46% of women are taking less than 7,500 steps per day. Again, most of us are not meeting activity guidelines, and we're also just not moving a whole lot. And when we look at why this is, the things I hear the most and the things that I say myself is I don't have enough time. I'm busy. And that is true, but a different way of thinking about that, what we're actually saying when we're saying, I don't have time or I'm busy, it's a different way of saying exercise is not as important as other things. Because you probably are finding time to take your kids to their activities if you have children. Some of us, I am a new competitive hockey mom. I'm finding lots of time in my schedule to take my son to his hockey activity multiple times a week. And I know a lot of you who listen are doing the same thing. Is it that we are too busy, or is it that we are allowing other things to take higher priority in our schedules? And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it usually is a sign that exercise is not something we are prioritizing more than overtly not having time for. People are busy at work. I get that. We have to work, but you probably don't need to work through your lunch break, which a lot of you are doing. You could maybe squeeze out for a 15-minute walk on your lunch break. Again, I want to explore some of the common myths, some of the ways that we make exercise way harder and more complicated than it needs to be, and give you some real practical suggestions for how you can build more physical activity into your life. So let's get into it. Here are some of the, what I'm calling thinking traps that are exhausting and that are also keeping us very sedentary. I asked some of you to share with me your frustrations or confusions around exercise. And I think the first comment I got was around this idea of all or nothing thinking. What that sounds like is stuff like, well, if I can't work out for an hour, it's not worth going at all. Or I need to work out 5 days a week, otherwise I'm not going to get results. A lot of us get really wrapped up in this all or nothing thinking, which is that if we're not doing it at the full maximum amount, or we're not doing it perfectly, then we're not going to do anything at all. So a lot of us will kind of fluctuate between being highly motivated, going to the gym, going for the walks, doing the yoga, doing the things, and then something happens. We get sick, we get tired, our kid gets sick, and then we go and we do nothing. And so we're constantly going from like full on to nothing, and there's nothing in between. And what this means for a lot of us is that we end up doing way less exercise over time because it's either I'm all in or I'm out. One of the things I do every single day with my patients is I help them set better goals. And what I mean by better is more realistic goals. One of the things that I always get people to think about, especially if you haven't been exercising a lot or very regularly, instead of saying something like, I'm going to start walking every day for half an hour, or I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week for an hour, start with a bite. Start with an exercise snack. What is a small step in the direction that you are trying to go? So instead of saying, I'm going to walk 30 minutes 5 days a week, the snack size could be, I'm going to walk around the block. This is what I've been doing lately. I'm trying to walk more in the morning before I sit for the day. I literally go out and I have a little loop in my neighborhood that takes 8 to 10 minutes. Now, am I going to change my life in an 8-minute walk? No. But you know what's a whole lot easier to convince my brain to do at 8 a.m.? Is go for an 8-minute walk instead of a 30-minute walk. And again, what that means is I'm going out for more walks because I've made it snack size. And when it's snack size, it is easier for your brain to want to do the thing. If you want to learn more about how your brain gets in the way of your habits, I'm going to invite you to go back and listen to the episode called The One Where We Create Habits That Stick with Katie Falloon-Drew. She is a habit change expert. She gave super helpful practical information for helping us understand why creating new habits and exercising is so friggin' hard because our brain doesn't want to do it. And so a lot of times we think we are unmotivated. You're not unmotivated. Your brain wants to conserve energy. And especially if you're waiting till the end of the day and you've spent your whole day taking care of the children, going to work, driving, doing errands, going to hockey, insert your life. By the time you get home, your brain is like, can we please relax? So that couch is going to look really, really appealing to your brain because it's trying to conserve energy. So it's not that you're unmotivated, it's that you have a brain that is trying to conserve energy and you're trying to work against that. And that feels hard. The first kind of piece of advice is if you tend to get stuck in this all or nothing thinking that if I'm not going for a 30-minute walk, what's the point? I want to invite you to really bring it down. Create a small goal. Create a snack-sized version of your exercise goal. Because the more you do that, the more your brain will get used to the new thing that you're doing. And I will not say it will ever feel easy, but it can eventually feel easier. The second thinking trap that I see a lot of us falling into is the idea that our exercise is not working. And really what we're often saying with that is that I'm not losing weight. Let's hear from one of our listeners who's going to share how this has been showing up in her life.
Hi, Dr. Sarah. I've been strength training 4 days a week for 2 years and lifting heavier than I have in my whole life. I'm stronger than I've ever been, but to look at me, you would never know I'm this active. It's frustrating not seeing the impact or results visually. Not that it actually matters. I want to be strong, period. How do we keep pushing ourselves and encouraging ourselves when we can't see the fruits of our hard work?
Thank you for sharing that, because I know a lot of women are listening to that and feeling very much the same way. And I'll share a little bit about my own journey with exercise. I think the line that stood out to me the most in what you just shared is, what do we do when we're not seeing the fruits of our hard work? And I would push back a little bit and say, most of us are only focused on one fruit of our hard work, and that is our physical appearance. You named multiple benefits that you are having, and these are the fruits that most of us ignore or downplay, especially if there's no physical appearance change, right? What is actually happening when you are exercising is you're getting stronger. You probably have more energy. You might be sleeping better. You're building stronger bones. You're reducing your risk of getting things like cancer and dementia and heart disease and osteoporosis. But none of those things feel good enough if our body doesn't look the way we think it's supposed to look when we're exercising. And this is a huge problem because if your main motivation for exercise is to change your physical appearance, you're going to lose motivation real quick if that doesn't show up. And for most of us, it doesn't dramatically change our physical appearance. If we look at Olympians, they come in all shapes and sizes. They are all literally the best athletes in the world. They are the strongest, fittest, top level people in their different sports. And yet they don't all look the same. So why do we expect that our strength training, our Pilates, our walks are going to make all of us look a certain way? And the reason that we have this expectation actually has nothing to do with health, right? Health doesn't look a certain way. Fitness doesn't look a certain way. Strength doesn't look a certain way. But beauty standards sure do. They look thin. They usually look white. They look very firm. They look like they have very little body fat. But those are not the average result for most people who exercise. Those are beauty standards that a very, very small percentage of people in this world are ever going to achieve. I just saw a video this morning in my feed with Alana Marr, who's an incredible American rugby player, Olympian, gold medalist. And she literally was just showing her stomach and being like, I have a normal stomach. I do not have a six-pack. I am an Olympian who exercises, who's won a gold medal, and I don't have a six-pack. And so I think this is one of the things that gets most often in the way of us being consistent with our exercising and continuing with exercise. When we do not get the physical results that we think we should be getting based on beauty standards, we stop, we quit, we think we're doing something wrong. But really, what most of us mean when we say that we want to see the fruits of our labor is we want the aesthetic of what we have been sold a healthy, fit body looks like. And that is almost always a body that has low body fat and high muscle tone and definition. But again, not too much, because you can't be too muscular. God forbid we get too muscular. I would really encourage you to focus on other fruits of your labor that are not focused on your physical appearance. Because you said it, I am stronger, I'm lifting heavier than I ever have, but it doesn't feel good enough because I don't look the way that I'm supposed to. And what I want to lovingly remind you, it's all bullshit. There's no way that we're supposed to look when we strength train or exercise. That is just another way that beauty standards come in and make us feel like we're not good enough, so that we feel insecure, so that they can sell us stuff. Please don't allow your appearance to be the only outcome you're looking for when you're exercising, because here is the sad truth. Exercise does not work for weight loss. People get real upset when I say this. We've done a gajillion studies on weight loss, and it is pretty clear that for the vast majority of people, exercise on its own does not trigger a lot of weight loss. It is wonderful for maintaining weight. It is great if you've lost weight or you're trying to not gain more weight. It's great for that. It's not great for weight loss. Here's why. When we look at all of the calories that a person burns in a day, exercise makes up 5% of that. So even if you are exercising for an hour, 5 days a week, that still only makes up 2.9% of your week. Should you exercise? 100%. Should you expect your body to dramatically change and shrink because you're exercising? Unfortunately not. What's super interesting, one of the many things I've learned in my obesity fellowship that I'm currently doing, is that people nowadays are actually doing more intentional exercise than we ever have before. And yet obesity rates are rising. We're not going to exercise ourselves out of weight gain. But one of the things that I think is a huge opportunity where a lot of us are not getting as much as we could is something called non-exercise activity, or NEAT. This makes up 10 to 15% of the daily calories we burn. So again, exercise was 5%. Non-exercise activity is 10 to 15%. It's 2 to 3 times more. And what NEAT is basically not sitting all day long. It is how much natural movement we can build into our days. And as I said earlier and shared some of these stats, most of us are very sedentary. So even if you work out for an hour a day, if that's your only exercise, you're still sedentary because you're moving 1 hour out of the whole day. And as I said earlier, working from home, I think, has been one of the worst things for this. And I have so many patients who are like, nothing's changed. I've gained 15 pounds. And one of my questions is, were you working from home 5+ years ago? I know I wasn't, and most of you weren't. And we sometimes forget that that's been a massive change. Not to mention the massive stressful pandemic we lived through, Most of us don't have to leave our house several days a week, and a lot of us don't, which means we're not moving a whole lot. And then when we layer in menopause, we know on average that women going through menopause take about 3,000 fewer steps in a day. And that adds up. And again, if you're not really tracking your steps, which you don't have to, you might not realize that you're moving several thousand steps less in a day because 3,000 steps isn't that long. It's not that hard to do less and not even realize that you're doing that. Please, please, please do not feel like you're doing anything wrong if you're not losing weight or you don't appear a certain way from exercise. This is one of the exhausting lies that we have been sold, that if we exercise, if we do the right exercise, we're all going to have the beautiful Pilates body with the lean, toned muscles. It's all garbage. And we are exhausting ourselves trying to achieve that. And again, for a lot of us, what this looks like is that we are less consistent because our motivation goes into the toilet if we don't see physical results that we expect. Hey, we're going to get right back to today's episode, but I want to take 30 seconds to remind you of something important. Your body has a voice, and fatigue is often how it speaks when you've been ignoring its whispers. If you've been feeling tired, disconnected, or unsure about what your body needs anymore, my Effortless Energy Reset can help you tune back in. It's a 6-week online program that walks you through my Speak method, a step-by-step process to help you sync, pause, examine, align, and rekindle your energy so you can reconnect with your body's wisdom and your inner voice. It's simple, practical, and designed to fit your real life, not add more to your plate. And right now, when you use the promo code FATIGUEFIXER, you'll save $50 off your enrollment. Join today at fatiguefixer.ca/reset and start listening to your body again. All right, next up is I need to figure out the best exercise. So this is often like analysis paralysis, where you decide, I'm going to exercise, but I'm going to spend a month and a half looking at all the different options. And I'm going to figure out like, what is the best exercise for me? Here's what you need to know. All exercise is good. There's no such thing as bad exercise. And especially if you are starting out, I would encourage you to not focus on the best exercise. Don't focus on creating this like fancy optimized workout. Focus on just starting and being consistent. Just pick something that feels somewhat appealing and start doing it. So I can tell you from my own exercise journey, when I started doing Pilates probably 6 years ago now, I literally started doing it once a week. And I probably did that for a month, 2 months, I don't remember. And then I increased to 2 times a week. And I did my 2 times a week of Reformer Pilates for 5 years in a row. If I had aimed to do Pilates 3, 4, 5 times, I actually would have done probably less Pilates over the 5 years because it would have been way harder to be consistent. And I probably would have fallen into the all or nothing. And I would have probably had some times where I went 5 days a week and a bunch of times where I went 0. Sometimes picking a smaller frequency and focusing on just doing that consistently, if we look over a span of time, you're going to end up doing more exercise. Don't underestimate something you do twice a week. That's something that you're going to end up doing over 100 times per year, right? Do you think you would be better off a year from now if you went for 100 more walks, or you did 100 more Pilates classes, 100 more strength training or yoga or dance or whatever you like to do? Of course, you'd be better off. But sometimes we look at something and we're like, twice a week? What's the point of that? The point is, a year from now, you'll have done it over 100 times. And again, if you try to convince your brain to do something 2 times a week, it will probably create a whole lot less resistance than trying to do it 5 times a week. we need to start thinking less about making things perfect and figuring out what is best. Most of us just need to pick something and try to be consistent at it. And then once you've built that consistency, then you can look at, okay, do I need to tweak this? Do I want to optimize it? Most of us are optimizing before we've even created a habit, and it's completely unnecessary. The thing that actually inspired this whole episode is cycle syncing. If you are unfamiliar with cycle syncing, it is the idea that women should or need to change their exercise and sometimes their nutrition and do all kinds of like fancy things for the different phases of their cycle. Now, I fell into this whole thing years ago when it first became a whole thing. I'm here to tell you it's completely unnecessary. And the reason I wanted to talk about this specifically is I have a patient I worked with recently who was just constantly overwhelmed by all the information she was trying to navigate, especially when it came to exercise. She's like, do I need to cycle sync? Do I need to avoid cardio? I need to do strength. And I was like, you don't need to stress about all of that. Most of us just need to move. When we look at the science, there is no evidence that women are objectively weaker at any point of the cycle. You might feel weaker. You might be more tired. You might not want to go to your workout when you're on your period or right before. But what I've learned from strength training is some of my best workouts and my strongest days happen in the parts of my cycle where I'm supposed to be weakest. And then I have some workouts that are complete garbage when I'm ovulating and I'm supposed to be at my peak. Your hormones are not the only thing that dictate your strength. They're not the only thing that dictate how your workout's going to be. So you absolutely do not need to do a fancy workout based on your cycle. Because what this means for a lot of women is that before their period or on their period, they either skip their workouts, do very light workouts, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, most of us are already not getting enough exercise. So now when we're given permission to not really have to work out at certain parts of our cycle, a lot of times we become even more sedentary and we're actually missing out on opportunities to build strength because you can absolutely build strength at any part of your cycle. Now, does that mean you should push yourself if you feel like garbage before your period? No. You can always adapt your workout depending on how you feel. What I would say is don't go into your workout assuming it's going to go badly or that you're going to be weak just because of where you are in your cycle. Because again, there's no objective data showing that we are weaker at any point. You can do any kind of workout at any point of your cycle. You are not going to mess up your hormones if you do cardio at one point or there's no exercise that you're going to do at a supposedly wrong time of your cycle that's going to cause a problem. Do your workouts, focus on consistency, don't worry about where you are in your cycle. If you're having an off day, no matter where you are in your cycle, obviously tone it down. The next myth that is sadly still floating around is around cortisol. I did a whole episode on cortisol, so if you haven't listened, you can go back and listen to that one. In case you need to hear it again, if you didn't listen to that episode, exercise does not raise cortisol long-term. Doing too much cardio or HIIT or CrossFit is not causing high cortisol. All exercise will temporarily increase cortisol because you're doing something that is putting stress on the body, and cortisol is a natural byproduct of the stress response. But when we look at people who exercise regularly, they have better cortisol management than people who do not. So if you have been afraid to do your cardio, if you've quit your spin or your HIIT or your CrossFit because you're afraid that it's spiking your cortisol, you don't need to do that. We absolutely want to do intense forms of exercise. We want to do cardio. There are tons of benefits. So we really need to stop freaking women out about cortisol. And the kind of other piece to this conversation is this idea that you're not losing weight because you're not doing the right exercise. That's also not accurate. You're not losing weight because you're not doing the right exercise. Most of us are not losing weight because getting into and staying in a calorie deficit is freaking hard. Number one, exercise is not a great vehicle for weight loss. And if you are not losing weight, it's not because you didn't pick the right exercise, it's because exercise in general doesn't help with weight loss. It's not because your cortisol is too high. It's not because you're doing the wrong kind of exercise. And part of why this frustrates me so much is that, again, when we make exercise harder and more complicated for women, we often bring them into confusion. And again, this analysis paralysis, and women just often don't do anything because they don't know what to do. They're afraid to do the wrong thing. And then we stay sedentary. I cannot do an episode about exercise without briefly talking about weighted vests. These are the latest trends. I get it. I bought one. I hated it. It made me so angry to go on my walks wearing this thing. Listen, the research on weighted vests is pretty mixed, and the studies that show benefit were where people wore a weighted vest for over 8 hours a day, which is not how most of us are using it. If you do any kind of strength training or anything where you're using your body weight, you are probably not going to benefit from adding a weighted vest to your walk. Now, if that's the only weights you can manage and it makes you feel good and you feel good doing your weighted vest walk, knock yourself out. But if you've been feeling like, should I get a weighted vest? Maybe I need a weighted vest. Please save your money. You don't need a weighted vest. I would much rather you buy dumbbells or kettlebell or some other kind of weight, which is way more practical, and not a weighted vest. And I've never created such a stir on my Instagram as when I said that weighted vests were not something I cared about or recommended. But again, walking with a weighted vest does not increase your bone mineral density, despite what all the famous menopause docs are saying. It just doesn't do that. So if that is the main reason why you're contemplating it or you're doing it, again, please save your money, pick up some other weights that are heavier than the weighted vest, and you'll be much better off in the long run. If I had a few words of advice for anyone listening to this who wants to be more active, who hasn't been active for whatever the reason, here would be my couple words of advice. My first is that some exercise is better than none. We need to stop aiming for perfection. We need to stop thinking it's something we got to do every day. If you are doing nothing, start doing something. Pick something and do a little bit more than nothing. You will 100% be better off. Number 2, we got to find a different motivator than weight loss and appearance. This is why a lot of us get really frustrated. This is why a lot of us don't stick with our goals because we supposedly aren't seeing results. Believe you me, I was chatting about this with a friend. Both of our parents are in their 70s. My mom is very active. This friend's mom is not very active. And we were saying we can really start to see the difference for our parents in terms of who's been active and who hasn't. So yes, you might not have a six-pack, you might not have the lean Pilates arms, but you will be so grateful that you stuck with that strength training when you are 75 and you can still carry your groceries and move and be active and you're not struggling to get in and out of a low chair. Our goal, what we ideally should be working towards, is 150 minutes a week or more of moderate intensity exercise. Again, that's 2.5 hours over the week. And when we say moderate intensity, I love this. You should be able to talk, but not sing. So that could be brisk walking, could be running, swimming, cycling, tennis, dancing, pick whatever you like. Do something where you're getting your heart rate up and aim to do it 2.5 hours per week. And if you're if that voice is saying, well, I don't have time for that, with love, grab your phone, look at your stats. I spend 2.5 hours a day, more than that probably on my phone. So again, do I not have time, or am I prioritizing Instagram over exercise? And if I'm real about that, I do have time. I'm just choosing not to do it. Start small, build your habits first, and then you can do longer and more frequent. You can add in variety, but please keep it simple. It doesn't need to be complicated, and it doesn't need to be fancy. And last of all, please, please, please try to find things that are fun. If you hate yoga, stop forcing yourself to do yoga. One of my favorite things that I do every week is I go to a dance class, Dance with Emily. If you live in Ottawa, please just go and do a Dance with Emily class. I literally am smiling the whole time. So are the other 200 women in this room, just dancing our hearts out. You do not need to have a dance experience. I am not a dancer. I don't have any dance training. Neither do most of the people in this class. It is the funnest way I move my body every week by far. I get my heart rate up, I'm jumping, I'm singing, I'm doing it with my girlfriends. It's such a fun way to move your body. So find fun things to do. Maybe go for a walk with a friend, try a new sport, try group fitness, right? Don't be afraid to have fun. Moving our bodies should be fun and it should feel good. I hope I have helped make exercise feel a little bit more attainable because again, if you are feeling tired, I would say the number one thing you could do today to give yourself more energy and fix your fatigue is to move your body, get some exercise, go for a walk. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you right back here in 2 weeks. I know your time is precious, so it means so much to me that you're here. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a woman in your life who could use a little extra energy and encouragement today. It's a small way to show her you care, because we're all in this together. Wondering what the next step is? Find out what's really draining your energy by taking my fatigue fingerprint quiz at fatiguefixer.ca/quiz. You'll discover which of the 5 most common types of fatigue you're dealing with, like frazzled fatigue, where your body's exhausted but your mind won't turn off, or drained fatigue, where no amount of sleep ever feels like enough. Your results will include recommended labs to ask your doctor about, plus my top suggestions for habits and practices that can help you start feeling more rested, calm, and in control. Because here's the thing, being tired all the time isn't normal, and you deserve to feel like yourself again. And hey, if you've got a story to share, a question, or just something on your mind, leave me a voicemail. Your voice might even make it into a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not all in your head. I believe you, and we'll figure this out together. I'll see you right back here in 2 weeks.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.